Tapping, and I said, all right, let's give them a couple of more days. They're tapping because it's a meaningful paper.
It's a sharp change in tone from the president, who for months now has insisted that a deal is right around the corner.
We have major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement. And they want to make a deal so badly. You have no idea how badly they want to make a deal.
Could you foresee a deal in Iran this upcoming week?
I do see a deal in Iran, yeah. Most of the points are already negotiated and agreed to. We're very close to making a deal. We were very close to a deal. I don't think there are any sticking points. We're very close to having a very, very good, strong, powerful deal.
The frustration is starting to show, and Trump is putting more red lines on the table, more ultimatums. And it seems to me that it's not disconnected from the economic news that we got today, which is that inflation has spiked once again, now at 4.2% annually for the month of May. It is having an impact on the economy and even Trump's own timeline. We've blown past that so many times at this point. He's starting to show his frustration.
We've got fast-moving breaking news tonight as the U.S. carries out a wave of new strikes against Iran. Iranian leaders claim they're shutting down the Strait of Hormuz to all ships in response. And now the risk of returning to an all-out war, it's higher than it's been in weeks. The president says Iranian officials called him while he was in the Situation Room tonight and told him to stop the bombing. He also said to Fox News that if Iran doesn't agree to a deal, he will, quote, bomb the S out of them tomorrow night. Trump put it in slightly different terms earlier today while in the Oval Office. Either Iran can sign or the U.S. will keep striking.
We hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set. And we'll see what happens with the deal. All they have to do is they have to start signing a paper. It's fully negotiated.
Now, Trump has been floating a potential deal, over and over and over again, somewhere in the ballpark of 36 times. And today, there was a new reason to ask how critical that deal really is. Economic data showing the fastest price hikes since 2023. But the president did not flinch or show signs that it's weighing on him. Instead, he said this.
Are you concerned, Mr. President, about the latest inflation number which came out this morning? Could that be a
No, I love it. The numbers were great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation.
Okay, now, look, I know Trump is no stranger to provocative answers, but loving the inflation? Well, that's an all-time head scratcher, isn't it? I can't think of anybody who loves inflation. It's like saying you love surge pricing because everyone wants to get into Madison Square Garden. Even the Biden White House admitted inflation was a problem coming out of COVID. It just waved it away as transitory. And you'd think that that's still fresh in people's minds, right? Because it is. A chart like this would give Trump some cause for concern. Annual inflation rising to a 3-year high. That's more than 4%. But Trump has been saying for weeks that sticker shock isn't going to change his approach to the war. And when it comes to Iran, your wallet ain't his concern.
How much longer will Americans continue to see these high gas prices?
Well, they're not very high.
To what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. You want to see the world exploded? You want to see a problem? And this is peanuts. And I appreciate everybody putting up with it for a little while.
Hours before President Trump canceled strikes on Iran, he threatened to take over the country's main oil export hub on Kharg Island. Trump posted on Truth Social the U.S. would, quote, assume total control of their oil and gas markets, much like we have with Venezuela, which is working out brilliantly for both Venezuela and the United States. In the span of less than 2 months, the U.S. deposed the president of Venezuela, then worked with Israel to carry out a deadly strike on Iran that included, of course, killing its supreme leader. Joining me now, Venezuelan opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez. Good to have you back. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you.
You, of course, have been opposing the Venezuelan regime for many years, and you've spent time in prison. More recently, after you publicly supported the U.S. military operation that led to Nicolas Maduro's arrest, you say that regime authorities took over your home in Caracas, even killed your dogs. Can you tell us what you experienced?
Well, it's not that I said, it's what we lived. So after I supported the deployment of the U.S. Navy to remove Maduro, this is back in December.
The breaking news, Trump claims there's a deal. Iran says not so fast. President Trump, in the span of about 7 hours, careening today from threatening Iran with a land invasion to saying it's all resolved.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents. We should get done over the next few days. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe, and it's a great thing. I won't be able to be there, but JD will be there, Vice President, and some of the people. Steve Witkoff did a great job, Jared.
Wanted to play that out so you could hear all three names, Vance, Witkoff, and Jared. Remember back in April, Trump claimed that very same trio, Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner, were on their way back to Islamabad for peace talks. He told the New York Post, in fact, this is the quote, "They're heading over now. They'll be there tonight." They were not on their way that night, and they have not been there since. But this is the 39th time, at least, that Trump has said a deal is close.
They're begging to make a deal.
I think they want to make a deal very badly.
Iran is dying to make a deal. They want to make a deal so badly.
We're close to a very good deal.
We're in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal.
So how solid is this alleged deal? Well, here's Trump again today.
You said this was just a concept of that agreement. So is this just essentially setting the stage for deeper talks on nuclear?
It's a very strong memorandum of understanding.
So translation, basically something like a deal to talk about a possible deal. So that's one part of this. Then there's the big question of who is the deal with?
Has the Supreme Leader approved this deal, sir?
I understand the answer is yes.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson tonight, though, said that reports of a finalized agreement were merely speculation, saying Tehran has not made a final decision on a deal. And then the Iranians added, quote, U.S. actions are affecting the diplomatic process. The Americans kept changing their positions. Now, you can never trust what you're hearing out of Tehran, but there is a problem here. I mean, if you look at Trump's wild swings today alone, this morning he posted on social media, and I quote, "The United States will be hitting Iran, all caps, very hard tonight." He said that this morning. He said then that we will be taking Kharg Island. Okay, so that's all was said today. And then, right, there was a deal and it's all over. He took it all back. The wild swings from blowing a civilization off the map to a deal 39 times have, to put it bluntly, hurt Trump's credibility in a major way. Just listen to the reporting and commentating on Fox News.
That's not.
But if Trump is not listening to Fox News, he is listening to the markets. And the impact of the Strait of Hormuz closure is becoming simply too big for Trump to avoid. Energy executives warning the White House that key oil reserves are running dangerously low and that high gas prices are not going away. And financial markets top analyst Jim Cramer said this today.
He's a highly emotional man that's running a military. He is the opposite of General Marshall.
General Marshall, of course, won the war and the peace that followed in World War II. And by the way, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Kristen Holmes is out front at the White House to begin our coverage. And Kristen, what is the latest you're learning there?
Aaron, we still don't know if this is going to get across the finish line. I mean, President Trump was very clear in that meeting in the Oval Office when he was talking to reporters that it's not a done deal. Even though he's stopped these strikes, he said he was stepping down because it was imminent. He also said that it was in pretty final shape. He also talked a lot about this idea of the conceptual version of this. He was asked specifically about enriched uranium, which I will remind you has been a sticking point for both sides throughout this entire negotiations. And he said conceptually they have agreed to something. Now, I do think we need to continue to stress that this is not a peace deal. This is a memorandum of understanding. This is the seeds that a peace deal could hopefully grow from. We are still in the initial steps. And again, we still do not know if this is going to get across the finish line. Now, interestingly, President Trump has had a number of phone calls with various leaders of other nations, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The reason why that is so fascinating is that we were learning that Netanyahu was taken aback by President Trump's announcement on social media that this agreement had been approved to. He was actually in a meeting about Iran and security in Iran and had no idea about any kind of impending agreement with Iran. But now he has spoken to President Trump. I will say we are getting good signs from mediators who say that they think that there's been a breakthrough. They are cautiously optimistic, although we have heard that before, Aaron.
Is it for real this time? Late today, just hours after promising heavy new airstrikes and threatening to take a piece of Iranian territory, the president said a deal to end the conflict was at hand.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents, which should get done over the next few days. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe, and it's a great thing. Stock market's up 1,000 points. That means they like the deal.
The president from the Oval Office late this afternoon, and if that sounds familiar, here's just a sampling of the 38 times he has also said words to that effect.
We have major points of agreement. They want to make a deal, and we are very willing to make a deal. Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. Well, they want to make a deal so badly. You have no idea how badly they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal so badly. I do see a deal in Iran. We were very close to a deal. It's looking very good that we're going to make a deal with Iran, and it's going to be a good deal. This process should go very quickly. We're going to end that war very quickly. They want to make a deal so badly. We think we're close to a deal, and that's okay. We're in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal.
Today makes 39 times that he has said something like that. The president also said that this, quote, great settlement, as he called it, could be signed in a matter of days, as you noted, in Europe. He did not, however, say just what the two sides would actually be signing on to.
It's a very strong memorandum of understanding. That is a little conceptual, but it's something that's going to get done. And if it doesn't get done for any reason, which I can't imagine that not happening, they want to sign it as much as I do or more.
So whatever actually the memorandum of understanding is or says, the president was asked whether Iran's supreme leader has approved of it. The president said yes. Iran's foreign ministry says nothing's been finalized. A spokesman telling state-run media that Tehran, quote, has not reached a final decision regarding any agreement. In any case, whatever has or hasn't been agreed to, the president's announcement was a complete 180 from how he started the day. At 8:22 this morning, he posted a warning that the U.S. would be hitting Iran, in his words, very hard tonight. Also that he planned to take Iran's main oil terminal on Karg Island and, quote, assume total control of their oil and gas markets. 20 minutes later, he went on Fox.
So you say you're announcing you're going to hit them very hard tonight. What went into posting that?
Well, it's just one of those things. They have no defense. They can't do anything about it. If we dropped $250 million worth of bombs on them last night, the whole thing is crazy. But they're really in submission. They just don't know it yet.
That was just about 8:45 this morning. By 1:28 this afternoon, he was posting that he was calling off the strikes because, quoting now, discussions with the Islamic Republic of Iran have been brought to the highest levels of Iranian leadership and approved. Approved, he added, quote, in both concept and great detail. And just moments ago, phoning into a political event for Georgia voters, the president, for what is now the 40th time, said this.
Our country is doing really well. I don't know if you heard, but we ended the war with Iran today, and they have agreed never to have a nuclear weapon.
So he's saying the war has ended, and they've agreed never to have a nuclear weapon, which may even be true, but for now remains to be seen. Starting off tonight with CNN Chief White House Correspondent and anchor of The Source, Caitlin Collins. How much does the president's optimism about a deal align with what you are hearing behind the scenes at the White House?
It's hard to say, Anderson, because we have seen this show before many times over the last 2 months since this ceasefire was first brokered and announced by the president over 2 months ago, where he's gone back and forth, said that a deal was incredibly close, that they had agreed to all the main points. I mean, I remember flying back with him when he went to Graceland several weeks ago. We were on Air Force One, and he was telling us on the tarmac of the airport that they had agreed to basically everything, the major points here, and that they were on the verge of getting an agreement. And of course, here we are in June, still no deal has been signed as of this moment. So obviously the skepticism is warranted, is understandable, given how many times the president has said a deal is close when no deal has materialized. I will say I've talked to people inside the administration and other foreign officials who have said that they are optimistic that this at least memorandum of understanding could be signed this weekend. You heard the president saying there that it could involve the vice president going to Europe as soon as this weekend to potentially sign that. And obviously that is not the end of this. That is just getting to at least that starting point here of moving forward. But obviously the background here does complicate it a lot. I mean, there were strikes back and forth last night, strikes back and forth the night before. The president had teased those strikes today before calling them off just 5 hours later. And we've seen how he can veer from one position to the other within minutes. I mean, going from saying that they were going to seize Kharg Island soon, as he said this morning, something that would involve U.S. troops on the ground based on what our experts have told us, and then to saying, Americans, or that they don't really have the Iranians don't have the stomach for it, and then getting to this point. And so it all just remains to be seen in terms of where this actually goes from here. But at least right now, there is some optimism that they could at least be close to that MOU as of this weekend. Obviously, it's Thursday. We'll have to wait to see if it actually does materialize. So the president's back and forth between promising and Iran. Today's shift stands out from pretty much all of it. That's because within the span of about 5 hours this morning, the president went from saying, quote, the United States will be hitting Iran very hard tonight, to, I have canceled the scheduled strikes and bombings against Iran, with the president arguing that the two sides were close to an agreement. That first threat came at 8:22 this morning. The president backed off at 1:28 p.m. Then, tonight, during a call with voters in Georgia, President Trump argued that the war is over.
I don't know if you heard, but we ended the war with Iran today, and they have agreed never to have a nuclear weapon, something that we insisted on. That was the whole purpose. That was 95% of it.
That comment there from the president came after he told reporters inside the Oval Office this afternoon that a framework for a peace deal had not only been reached, but could also be signed within a couple of days.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents, which should get done over the next few days. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe, and it's a great thing. As soon as we sign, which could be soon, very soon, maybe over the weekend, in Europe.
Now, I'm told tonight that there is a lot of optimism about a potential signing happening in Europe this weekend. We'll obviously have to wait to see if that actually happens. That's because the skepticism has been warranted here. Just 24 hours ago, the United States and Iran were firing at one another. That's something that we've seen happen repeatedly since that ceasefire was announced more than 2 months ago. And through it all, the president has repeatedly insisted that a deal was on the horizon.
We're very close to making a deal. We were very close to a deal. I mean, Iran is dying to make a deal. I can only tell you that. They'd like to make a deal very badly. Very badly. We're very close to making a deal. We think we're close to a deal.
The president's back and forth approach to this war has been on display also when it comes to whether or not to attack Kharg Island. That's the tiny island that is in the northeastern Persian Gulf. It's an economic lifeline for Iran because it handles roughly 90% of their crude exports. And this morning, as he was saying that strikes were going to happen, the president also warned at some point in the not too distant future, we will be taking Kharg Island. Pretty definitive. 22 minutes later, though, he said this.
I don't know that America has the stomach for it, to be honest with you. You're going to make a fortune. But I don't know that America has the stomach. But as good as it is, I'm not sure the country has the appetite for it. And that's okay. I understand that.
22 minutes between that post and that statement. Now, all this comes as a spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry has been telling their state media that no agreement has been finalized after the president had posted about a deal being close, potentially. Here's what at least one congressional Republican had to warn about.
Iran needs to come to us wanting a deal. Right now, we're going to them, and they are abusing the president in these negotiations, if you ask me. Because they think he wants it more than they do. Right now, they think they can. They think they have the advantage over President Trump.
My lead source tonight is Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. And Senator, do you agree with the congressman there that Iran seems to think that they have the upper hand here, that they think Trump wants a deal more than they do?
I think they clearly feel they have the upper hand. They've demonstrated they can take a massive military campaign by the United States and still keep the Strait of Hormuz.
US President Donald Trump backs away from fresh strikes on Iran. This is what we know. It's breaking news. US President Donald Trump is calling off planned US strikes on Iran today, claiming that the two nations have reached a diplomatic solution. He made the announcement after issuing an absolute flurry of major threats to Iran over the past few hours. First, saying the United States will soon seize Hague Island, which handles roughly 90% of Iran's crude oil supply. Minutes later, he told Fox News he didn't know if America has the stomach to support that move. The president then cancelled those new strikes, claiming that Iranian leadership has approved all of the final points in negotiations. So far, there's been no confirmation from Tehran. CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak has been trying to keep up, Kevin.
And it has been whiplash. It was only a span of about 5 hours between when the president made that threat that he would renew strikes against Iran for a third straight night and potentially launch an operation into Hague Island, to when he said that, in fact, the sides had approved this deal and that the strikes would be called off. So what's happening here? You know, U.S. officials do see some progress in the negotiations. They received an updated proposal from Iran through the Qatari mediators last night. Remember, there had been a delegation from Qatar in Tehran working to try and bridge some of the gaps that had existed in this memorandum of understanding. And in the view of the American officials, the latest proposal that the Iranians had sent back was an acceptable one. They had achieved some consensus on some of the sticking points, whether it was the financial relief that Iran will receive as part of this deal, or how the nuclear negotiations will proceed. Because remember, this agreement is essentially a preliminary deal. It would end the hostilities and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but put off for the next 60 days some of the more detailed negotiations when it comes to Iran's nuclear program. Now, we've been in a place very similar to this before. The president has sounded optimistic about a deal, and we counted it up. It's been 38 times that he has suggested a deal was imminent over the last several weeks, only to see everything fall apart and only to see these tit-for-tat strikes ramp up again over the last week or so. So whether this is any different, or whether this is something that really does seem as if it's moving towards a deal, we have to wait and see. We have not heard from the Iranians, which will clearly be a very critical voice in all of this. We should also note that the president listed a number of regional countries who he had said approved this deal, the second one being Israel, although our reporters in Israel suggest that this announcement that the president put on Truth Social caught the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu off guard. And so that doesn't seem to be the case. And so where this goes from here, it's not exactly clear, although the president does say that the time and place of the signing of this will be announced shortly, suggesting that they have reached the agreement and they're working on the logistics of how to put pen to paper to get it signed. And so certainly a very dramatic shift in tone from the president. I think one of the latest dramatic shifts in tone that we've seen over the course of the last week or so when it comes specifically to the Iran conflict. But at least for now, the president saying that those strikes that he had said were going to happen in quite an intensive fashion, not going to be happening tonight.
Kevin, thank you so much. What we don't know is, will President Trump's claims of a done deal be real this time round? Joining us now, CNN international diplomatic editor Nick Robertson. I guess Kevin gave some clues there, didn't he? If Israel was taken by surprise, We haven't heard from Iran. We're, again, just going on Trump's word for this because there's multiple groups involved here.
There are, and of course there's the mediation efforts that have been going on and were going on a few days ago until sort of minutes before that sort of big exchange of missiles over the weekend. The mediation efforts were underway, and sources familiar with those efforts have continued to believe that a deal was close, that a deal was getting closer, that gaps have been narrowed down. You had Pakistan's interior minister in Tehran just over the weekend handing over a letter to Iran's foreign minister, a letter that was supposed to go to the supreme leader. President Trump is saying in his Truth Social that the messages, the communications are going all the way to the highest level. So this sort of creates, you know, if you believe the sort of positive narrative, it does create that narrative that the communications have continued. And if you look at the way conflicts are often resolved, or when they come to that very close to the point of resolution, there's a flurry of strikes or attacks. There's positioning. There's President Trump, if you will, saying that he's going to attacking one night, saying he's going to attack the next night, then backing away. But he will, if there's a deal to be had, if it's right that it's coming, he will be able to stand there and say, and I kept the pressure up and the force up, you know, until the last minute. So an effort, if you will, you could read it as trying to look strong. Of course, whether or not he gets a strong deal in favor of the United States, we won't know that till we see the details. But I think it was also interesting, just to sort of allude to where I am outside 10 Downing Street and the sudden resignation of the Defense Secretary John Healey today. In that two-page resignation letter, he mentioned that the UK is leading a multinational military force for stability in the Strait of Hormuz. I think there's a lot that's been happening behind the scenes that hasn't come out in the public domain. Of course, the nature of difficult negotiations to keep the details out of the limelight so that people can't quibble over them, and political pressure be applied to the people that are trying to make the deal. So in this context, perhaps some of the groundwork is just beginning to show itself of what could happen post the deal, where Iran gets rid of its blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the United States removes its blocking positions for entry to Iranian ports, potentially. And again, you could throw into the mix a G7 coming up this weekend or early next week in France, where there will be, and Geneva, Evian is the location for it, but a lot of people expected to stay in Geneva. Some of the people coming there, the leaders coming there, will be coming from the Middle East. So you can almost sort of see the positioning for the potential for President Trump to be proved right after the 38th time. Eventually, one would assume he's going to get it right, that there is a deal. But I think it's really difficult to say at the moment, and I certainly think it would be wise just to watch what happens again. So many times we've been here before, Max.
What do you make of this whiplash, as Kevin was describing it, the messaging from President Trump today? Because in the middle of it, he expressed some frustration at media coverage as well, didn't he?
Look, I think part of it is how we see President Trump try to negotiate. He tries to negotiate with strong-arm tactics, and it has proven not to be successful with Iran in the past, where he has decided they gave a gesture of removing their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz over a month ago, sort of April time, and President Trump said no, he was going to keep his blockade in place. The Iranians went and put theirs back in place again. President Trump's bluster has not, and his usual negotiating tactics have not worked well in these negotiations. So he's tended to become a little quieter. But that also paints a picture of a weaker president. And that's not a picture he likes. I think everyone's been aware that President Trump wants to come out of this and be able to say that he's done something that President Obama, that other previous presidents haven't been able to do with Iran. So having tough messaging, military strikes on the eve, if there is a deal, that creates the whiplash. But it also creates the conditions where he would perhaps feel more confident that this is the moment to take the tough decisions He's not going to get everything that he wants, neither are the Iranians. There's compromises in there. But the sense is that those compromises, and let's face it, the ceasefire went into effect at the beginning of April. Where are we? We're 2 months on from that. This has been a lot of talking. The conjecture at the beginning of all of this was President Trump wants a deal fast. There's a ceasefire. I need to get something fast. That's not how negotiations are done, particularly with Iran. That's what everyone said. Well, now we've had 60 days of talks, and people close and familiar with the process believe that gaps have been narrowed.
Nick, in Downing Street, a busy Downing Street, thank you. Let's get the view from Iran then. CNN's Fred Pleitgen is there. He's been speaking with senior Iranian officials, including the Supreme Leader's advisor. We note for you that CNN operates in Iran only with the permission of the government, but we maintain full editorial control of our reports.
The Iranians are vowing to hit back hard at U.S. military assets here in the greater Middle Eastern region if the United States continues the kind of bombing campaigns that we have seen here in this area over the past couple of nights. Of course, last night, once again, very kinetic, especially in the area around the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. hitting some places there, also hitting some coastal areas, saying it was targeting radar sites as well as air defense sites of the Iranians. The Iranians, for their part, saying that they hit back against U.S. military bases in Jordan, in Kuwait, and in Bahrain as well. On top of that, the Iranians also insist that the Strait of Hormuz is now completely shut to commercial traffic. Any ships trying to transit the Strait of Hormuz would be targeted. Of course, the U.S. denies that. However, the Iranians are insisting that that is the case. Now, I was able to speak to a senior Iranian official who's also an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, and he says that the United States will not achieve any progress on the diplomatic front if it keeps up its military campaign.
This has always been the case in this country. Whenever they attack, we respond, more severely and more heavily. So Trump is mistaken to repeatedly and constantly test our military capabilities. He must understand that the Islamic Republic will not back down nor step back from the entirety of his independence and national interests, and we will make the aggressors regret it.
Do you believe there will be a return to war with the United States?
This matter is in their hands. If they respect Iran's interests and act accordingly, the war will end. Otherwise, the war will continue.
All of that, of course, seriously jeopardizing the already very fragile ceasefire that's supposed to be in place between the United States and Iran. One of the things that has happened overnight last night was that a Qatari delegation was on the ground here in Tehran trying to move things closer towards a memorandum of understanding that would end the hostilities between the United States and Iran and pave the way for larger peace negotiations to then hopefully lead to a larger peace deal. However, with the violence that's been going on, especially in the Strait of Hormuz area, the Iranians are saying they consider that to be a violation of their sovereignty and that essentially renders the ceasefire meaningless. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Tehran.
Well, as we continue to cover developments around the Iran war, our Fred Pleitgen is inside Iran gauging Iranians' reaction. We must note, CNN operates in Iran only with the permission of the government, but we maintain full control of our reports.
While the Iranians acknowledge President Trump saying that he has canceled military action against the country, there still is a good deal of distrust and skepticism. Iranian official and semi-official media is cautioning that so far the country's top leadership has not yet officially signed off on any sort of draft agreement for a memorandum of understanding that would end the hostility between the two countries and at the same time pave the way for larger peace negotiations. However, one of the things that officials here have been acknowledging over the past couple of days was that messages were still being exchanged back and forth and that some of the gaps had indeed been narrowed. At the same time, the Iranians are saying that any sort of military action now, any more bombardment, would completely kill any of that momentum. The Iranians had also said that if the U.S. continues to strike this country, that there would be severe retaliation from its armed forces, and if there would have been been a return to full-on war, that the Iranians would expand that war beyond the Gulf region, potentially to places like the region of the Red Sea and the Mediterranean as well. Nevertheless, the Iranians have said that they prefer negotiations. They want a deal. However, the military here also says that they are prepared for any eventualities. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Zanjan, Iran.
Our waters. So this is
We're taking you to the White House. President Trump has just made what could be a significant announcement that some sort of agreement with Iran could be signed as soon as this weekend in Europe. They're also talking about fisheries, but reporters are asking questions, so we want to be there for them because there are many questions about the detail of any agreement and whether or not actually Iran's going to show up. We could actually see the vice president who will go to Europe, the president says, signing an agreement with Iran this weekend, but let's see.
Echoing that, with President Trump's leadership, this is another promise made, promise kept by President Trump that he was going to roll back these job-killing, community-killing, industry-killing jobs. He's done that last year with executive orders, doing it today with his proclamation. So I want to say thank you to President Trump. I want to say thank you to my great friend, Secretary Lutnick in Commerce. We have dual responsibilities across Commerce and Interior related to fish, and of course with our partners in the Pacific, because American Samoa, Guam, the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas Islands. We've got the Congresswoman here from Northern Marianas Islands. These are all American citizens. As Howard said, this is U.S. territorial waters, and they were closed to us and open to others. And that makes no sense. We've reversed that around, and so again, as you see around us, the jobs that are created in this industry are often second, third, fourth, and fifth generation family businesses. And these folks not only risk their lives, they risk their own personal capital to help feed America. They're the farmers of the sea. Just like President Trump's behind our farmers and ranchers, he's behind our fishermen. He's making sure that America is great. This brings back healthy food for our schools, our military, all the things that we're working on with Secretary Kennedy and with Pete Hegseth. So this is a win-win-win across the board. Again, thank you, President Trump. Thank you, Howard. Great day for America.
Thank you very much.
This is another example of America First, to be honest with you. Alaska provides 60% of the country's seafood. We're the state with halibut, salmon, king crab, you name it, comes from Alaska. Fishing in Alaska is one of the oldest industries in that entire state, employs thousands of individuals. Everyone has had fish from Alaska, we know that. But this is an example, again, of putting America first, workers first, and really this country first. And so on behalf of Alaska, on behalf of all fishermen and women, I want to thank you for what you're doing for this country and for the state of Alaska as well.
Governor, was this shutdown? I mean, it's just so hard to believe. So this was trauma for your industry.
So the president is,
well, your deregulation.
it's a fisheries event, but he's been taking questions on Iran. We want to keep across it for you. We'll come back to it as soon as he does take questions of Iran, because he has suggested a deal could be signed.
Making two major moves to seemingly try to dodge the political headwinds he's been facing. First, apparently calling off a potential third round of strikes on Iran in his very unpopular war. After announcing on social media discussions and final points of a deal were approved, the president gave more details this afternoon in the Oval Office.
They've taken a pounding. They've taken a pounding like very few people could take. And they want to make the deal a lot more than I do. Most important paragraph to me, Iran will in no way, shape, or form have a nuclear weapon or purchase a nuclear weapon. It's a very strong memorandum of understanding. That is a little conceptual, but it's something that's going to get done.
Now, Trump says the U.S. naval blockade will stay in place until the deal is complete and the Strait of Hormuz will reopen then as well. Of course, it's all still in question until the ink is dry, and we have heard this promise of an imminent deal many times. A source tells CNN that the U.S. believes meetings between Iranian and Qatari officials in Tehran helped resolve the last few sticking points, but the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran says that in a statement, Iranian officials have not confirmed a deal. Now, if the U.S. and Iran can, in fact, come to an agreement, it just might help the president with the nearly 60% of Americans who disapprove of his handling of the war in Iran. The president just answered some questions about this. What did he say on why this deal might be coming now?
Well, Jake said that he thinks Iran is getting a pounding. He credited the strikes from the last couple of days, and he said that he has learned that the supreme leader has approved this deal. Now, he had spoken to a number of Gulf regions, the leaders of those nations, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That was critical. He announced that during that Oval Office meeting because we had learned from sources that Netanyahu was surprised and caught off guard by President Trump's announcement that there was this imminent deal coming down the pike. And the one thing to keep in mind here, this memorandum of understanding, President Trump is using two words that don't really go together when he's explaining it, both conceptual and detailed. This is not a peace deal. This is the beginning of working towards a peace deal. There are still sticking points, but they believe that a lot can be set into motion once this memorandum is signed, including President Trump saying the Strait of Hormuz would open immediately as quickly as Saturday. Now, President Trump said he thought that the signing could happen in Europe as quickly as this weekend. He would not be attending, but Vice President J.D. Vance would be there, as well as Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, among others. The big question, of course, right now is whether or not they're actually going to cross the finish line. As you have said, President Trump has routinely, for the past month and a half, said that there was a deal imminent, and then nothing came to fruition.
Well, President Trump says a deal with Iran could be signed this weekend and has now walked back threats from just a few hours before that statement to strike Iran, quote, very hard, including its oil fields and refineries. He posted that he canceled those strikes and that the final points of a deal have been approved. So far, though, Iran has not given any confirmation. Joining us now, Dana Stroul. She's the research director at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Dana, good to have you.
Good to be with you.
So I wonder how not just Iran reads this dramatic back and forth, often within the span of a few hours, but also U.S. allies, Israel, Gulf allies. You have an administration that threatens a ground invasion of Iran, it seems, and then a few hours later says, oh, we have a deal and we're going to sign it this weekend.
I think there's a lot of whiplash across the Middle East right now.
The U.S. military has carried out new strikes in Iran. A source telling CNN the U.S. targeted a site that posed a threat to U.S. forces and commercial traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. My source on this is Beth Sanner, former Deputy Director of National Intelligence. All right, Beth, so these explosions were heard tonight near an Iranian port that's close to the strait. We've also learned that the U.S. intercepted these drones, right, that were launched from Iran. So really putting the fire in ceasefire. Is it still on as you see it?
Funny. I think it is still on. I mean, you can make a definition of this as defensive or, just in terms of the threat to shipping that you need to do this kind of activity. I personally, you can read it two ways. One is that this is just the same as the other day when we saw them planting mines and taking care of business, like Iran should not be threatening international traffic in the Strait. The other way to read it is that we're sending a signal, or maybe it's kind of a combination of these things and it's kind of a convenient way to send a signal. So we don't know. Now we'll have to see. The last time Iran took down a Reaper drone, about $30 million worth of retribution right there. Probably a couple $10,000 boats got taken out in exchange, the Iranian ones. This time, there probably wasn't anything that they took down from the United States. So let's see now what they do next. The rhetoric coming out of Iran, the fact that they were planting mines 2 days ago in the Strait, and the statements of the coming out from the official media saying that Iran had every intention to be basically, without saying it, taking tolls on the Strait, shows that they are hanging tough on this. And this is completely contrary to what President Trump said today in the cabinet meeting.
The president often threatens to blow up Iran, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of become used to that. We wonder if that's losing some of its effect. Today he threatened strikes, but not on Iran. Let's listen to this.
The strait's going to be open to everybody.
And who would control
it? It's international waters. Nobody's going to control it. We're going to watch over it. We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. That's part of the negotiation that we have. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up.
Okay, Oman has been a key mediator in this, the negotiations. What did you think hearing that?
Well, Iran today said in their statement that they were going to be working with Oman to take these tolls, to be creating this mechanism for transit in the Strait. And so after this happened, and I first thought, like, I wonder if he's just confusing the names. No, he wasn't confusing the names.
I thought that as well.
The State Department then put out the post that where it's repeated. So we know that's what he meant. And I think it was a signal to Oman. It's like, no, I'm sorry, but you can't be on Iran's side on this. We really are going to have a free and open international transit in the Strait, and you're not going to be playing some back channel stuff with Iran. And then frankly, like, you know, this is the fact about Oman, is that they have been very close in dealing with Iran in the past. They have been mediators, but at the same time, they've also, you know, turned a blind eye to some of the shenanigans in terms of Iran, for example, supporting the proxies in Yemen. So, yeah, it's a signal, and they mean it.
As if this wasn't enough of an uphill battle, peace talks between the U.S. and Iran, the president has added this additional challenge of saying that regional allies should sign on to the Abraham Accords, that they should normalize relations with Israel. And he really strengthened this demand, it felt like, earlier today, where he said that it's a condition. I'm paraphrasing, but that was essentially what he said, and that they owe it to us, that they owe it to the U.S. How much harder would that make things?
I think it will make it very hard, because as he then turned to Steve Witkoff and he said, so are they going to sign it? Aren't they going to sign it, the Abraham Accords? And Steve Witkoff's reply was, we're pressing them very hard, which suggests to me that Steve Witkoff knows that Saudi Arabia is not going to sign up. They pretty much said that out loud after this call on Sunday. They're not going to do that until and unless Israel starts moving in an irrevocable way toward a Palestinian state. And instead, what we're seeing happening in Israel, and the United States not pressing Israel as hard as we could on this, in the West Bank, things are getting worse. And, you know, in Gaza, things are exactly the same as where we left them, I don't know, 2 months ago. The Board of Peace has no money. Hamas refuses to disarm, and people are still suffering. You know, it is a mess. So Saudi's not going to sign on, and Pakistan also said, no way.
Yeah, that Witkoff moment was so telling.
Yeah.
Tonight, members of President Trump's cabinet can sleep a little bit easier knowing that they aced their latest loyalty test.
Thank you for your leadership, sir. The fact that we have dedicated presidential leadership is really what's made this possible.
President Trump, under your leadership, we've opened up lease sales on public lands. You turned Venezuela from a sanctioned adversary into a strategic ally in 45 minutes. Never happened in history before.
We are more resilient to energy price fluctuations due to your energy dominance agenda. Resilience and prosperity have been the marks of your second term.
There's only one man over the course of both presidency who has stood up and said they will never get a nuclear weapon. You created the conditions to ensure the American people and the world are safeguarded from this generational threat.
Mr. President, you have made us a nation of builders again. You're leading us to the greatest economy that the world has ever known. I hear it everywhere I go. Please thank the President for putting us back on track. They thank you. They love you.
The New York Times recently reviewed more than a dozen hours of these cabinet meetings and found that at least 1 in 6 sentences spoken by Trump's cabinet members offered the president some sort of praise. For example, it revealed that Marco Rubio flattered Trump the most. J.D. Vance topped the list for insulting Trump's political opponents. Pete Hegseth repeatedly declared that no other president could single-handedly end conflicts. And Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick credited Trump with saving America. The praise parade is a welcome show for Trump, who has a lot on his plate right now, an ugly midterm battle ahead, an economy stretching Americans to their limit, and the ongoing war with Iran. But Trump has vowed not to let political pressure rush him into making a deal.
They thought they were going to outweight me. You know, we'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms. Look what happened last night. That was the prelude to the midterms. People understand it. They know that Very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I'm doing that for the world. I'm not doing it just for us.
Let me play one more piece of what he said in that cabinet meeting today, this time about Oman. Listen.
Nobody's going to control it. We're going to watch over it. We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. That's part of the negotiation that we have. They would like to control it. Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up.
The top story is escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran. A U.S. official telling CNN that the U.S. has carried out new strikes in Iran, targeting a military site near the Strait of Hormuz that they say posed a threat to American forces and commercial traffic. It was being used to launch attack drones. Official says the move was purely defensive and aimed at maintaining the ceasefire amid ongoing efforts to reach a peace deal. Now, all this comes after Iran's state media reported 3 explosions were heard near an Iranian port close to the Strait of Hormuz. CNN's Ivan Watson starts us off. He's live in Hong Kong. Ivan, what do we know about these strikes?
Strait of Hormuz into the Persian Gulf, that strategic strait that Iran has basically shut down ever since February 28th, when the U.S. and Israel launched their war against Iran. Meanwhile, the U.S. military, a U.S. official tells CNN that the U.S. military shot down 4 Iranian drones, and then it carried out an attack on Iran on what it describes as a ground control station near the port of Bandar Abbas that was about to launch a 5th drone. CNN has reached out to U.S. Central Command to learn more about this. This comes after there was also an exchange of fire on Tuesday, also around the Strait of Hormuz. As part of what it was doing, Iran claims that it was opening fire on a U.S. oil tanker that was trying to pass through. We're trying to get clarification or confirmation on that claim right now, Alex.
And Ivan, we heard President Trump today even threatening Oman. What was that about?
That's a good question. Oman has been considered to have pretty good relations with the U.S., has mediated in the past to help get hostages out of Iranian custody, for example. Why don't we just take a listen to what he had to say?
The strait's going to be open to everybody.
And who would control it?
It's international waters. Nobody's going to control it. We're going to watch over it. We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. That's part of the negotiation that we have. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up.
Which I don't know how the Omani leadership is responding to that threat right now, but I think the part of the point here is that as the U.S. and Iran continue in their negotiations behind closed doors, they are also, to some degree, negotiating in public, making claims and counterclaims, with Iran continuing to insist that it is going to control the Strait of Hormuz in the future, suggesting that the other coastal state that borders the Strait of Hormuz, Oman, would share custody of that area. So I think that's part of where this latest threat from President Trump is coming from. Of course, the White House is arguing, no, this is an international waterway. Nobody's going to control it. And this is one of a number of sticking points, even as we've heard notes of optimism from the White House in the past couple of days about the possibility of a MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, being reached between Tehran and Washington. It's very clear that there are still major gaps here, including in whether or not the U.S. would unfreeze billions of dollars worth of money of Iranian assets as part of this agreement, which the White House has also denied, despite reports in Iranian state media to that effect.
Ivan Watson starting us off in Hong Kong. Ivan, thank you so much. Just into CNN, word of new Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon. The Israeli military says it hit Hezbollah infrastructure in the city of Tyre, which is outside of Israel's self-declared security zone. Israel earlier issued what appears to be its largest evacuation order for the city on the Mediterranean coast. The IDF has been ramping up its operations in southern Lebanon in recent days. Israel said on Wednesday that it had struck more than 150 Hezbollah targets in the preceding 24 hours.
And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett, and out front tonight, the breaking news: strikes are underway. As we speak right now, the U.S. is attacking Iran at this hour. Iranian state media says explosions were heard in 2 locations in the south of Iran near the Strait of Hormuz. The Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says, quote, key Iranian facilities will be bombed. And we've just got this just in. We'll show it to you. Iran's semi-official news agency is posting photos, we'll show them when we get them, of a drinking water reservoir that officials say was destroyed in a missile strike. And they're also showing munition fragments that experts are telling us appear to be from a U.S.-made bomb, one of the largest categories of precision-guided munitions. Now, we can't independently confirm those details. We'll show you the images when we have them, but that's what's coming out from Iranian state media, and it comes in the context of this: Trump levying threats against Iran earlier today.
We're going to be attacking them very hard. We hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today.
Those strikes, Trump says, are in retaliation for an Iranian Shahed drone, which brought down a U.S. helicopter, a drone that cost a few $1,000s, bringing down a helicopter that could cost more than $40 million. Quite a feat, considering this claim Trump has been making for more than 2 months now. Listen to him.
We've wiped every single force in Iran out very completely. Wiped out their military in every aspect. We've decimated them as a military. They have no military left. Iran's military is decimated. We have totally destroyed their military.
Well, the facts obviously show otherwise. And, well, it's not just the fact that the facts don't add up, and it's not people who are criticizing Trump who are calling out those inaccurate statements. It is now some of his biggest cheerleaders who are taking issue with that. Listen to Fox News host Laura Ingraham.
We keep hearing their military is destroyed, obviously, but if their military is destroyed, how are they continuing to hit us?
Okay, fair, accurate. And that coming just a day after Trump said a peace deal is imminent. And he claimed to be in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal, something that his cheerleaders are also taking issue with. Here's Fox News host Jesse Waters.
He keeps saying we're very close, we're days away, and I don't know what that means. We've heard that for a very long time.
Oh, he's right about that. No one knows what that means. In fact, Trump has actually made that claim at least 38 times since the war began. Well, today, Trump gave this explanation.
We were really close to a deal, but they keep tapping us along. They keep playing us for suckers.
And thanks in part to Trump's war with Iran, which is now in its 103rd day, annual inflation rose to a 3-year high of 4.2% in May, led by rising costs for energy. In fact, energy costs accounted for 60% of the increase. Energy costs that have surged because of the war in Iran. Trump, though, tonight said this about that.
I love it. The numbers were great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation.
It's such an odd thing to say, I love the inflation, but the comment is actually consistent for Trump. Remember this the other day?
To what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody.
And he actually went back and started the sentence with the predicate. You know, when you teach someone to, restate the question in the answer, he actually did it there. Kristen Holmes is out front at the White House. Kristen, Trump authorizing strikes on Iran for the second night in a row. We know this is happening as we speak. We talked about some of those images coming out of Iran now. What are you learning about where this is going, this escalation?
Well, that's certainly what we're trying to get to the bottom of, Aaron, because what we've seen from President Trump, we've seen this before. He's used this kind of rhetoric. He's even used strikes to essentially go all the way up to the line where he says he's going to obliterate a civilization, only to back down or extend a ceasefire in some cases. And we know that he has been trying to stay away from any kind of military action because he wants this war to be over. He wants to have some kind of diplomatic off-ramp. And that's likely why you're seeing the language you're seeing from CENTCOM, which is the U.S. Central Command, who put out this language about these strikes, saying that they were additional self-defense strikes, even though it is still a day later. And yesterday we had been told by U.S. officials that this was going to be limited in scope, in response to the downing of that helicopter, and also saying that it was in response to Iran's unwarranted and continued aggression. They're clearly trying to frame this in a way that this is still defensive strikes, not offensive strikes. So it gives you some idea of where this could be headed. But the other part of that doesn't really line up with what we saw today was the fact that President Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth were previewing this all day long, saying that they were going to strike again. So it is not as though they have been bombarded by Iran and now are defending themselves once again, but they are categorizing it as such. The other question about this is, what does this mean for those negotiations? We are clearly not in the same place we were 2 days ago when President Trump said a deal was coming in 2 to 3 days. You could hear his frustration today. This idea that Iran is tapping the United States along, something that, by the way, experts had told the United States and President Trump would happen in these negotiations because it's something that they have done before in the past. But at this point, you're seeing a level of frustration and a level of trying to figure out a way to bring the Iranians back to the table. The question is, do we go further? Does the United States go further than these strikes the second night in a row and enter back into a new phase where we are in a full-on military combat operation with Iran? Or are they going to actually just try to pull back and get Iran back to the table? We just don't know the answer.
Right. And of course, there's another player that can determine the answer to that, and that's Iran.
Right.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much. Kristen with the new reporting from the White House. And as I mentioned, Iran's semi-official news agency has posted photos of what they say is a drinking water reservoir that they say was destroyed in a missile strike. So we've got these images. Take a look at what you're looking at. They now also are showing images of munition fragments that experts tell CNN appear to be from a U.S. large precision bomb. Now, these are the images that we're showing you here. We can't independently confirm the details. Geolocation may add up, but obviously we don't know for sure when this was taken. I want to bring in Fred Pleiken because he is out front on the ground there in Tehran. And Fred, explosions heard tonight, multiple locations in Iran, much of it in the south along the strait with those new U.S. strikes. What more can you tell us about what's actually happening on the ground there?
Hi there, Aaron. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Iranians are saying that a lot of those explosions, or what people believe are explosions, are happening around that Strait of Hormuz area. One of the places that this seems to be focusing on is a little port town called Sirik, which seems to have some military elements there. Another place that we heard that there might be anti-aircraft fire is a place called Asaluye, which is actually one of the main energy hubs here in Iran. It's part of the Pars 2 gas field, which is very important for the Iranians. But again, not confirmed that there's any impacts there. There were some reports of some possible anti-aircraft activity, however, going on there. One of the things that we heard just a couple of minutes ago, and this comes from Iran Strait broadcaster, is that the Iranians are saying that the Strait of Hormuz, as far as they are concerned, is now completely closed down by the Iranian military, and that any ship trying to cross that strait will be targeted by the Iranians, whether it's an oil tanker or anything else. So that could be a significant development going on. I was able to speak to a senior commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps earlier today, and they vowed that there would be a harsh response if there were more strikes by the United States. So that's certainly something that we believe could happen in the not too distant future. The Iranians saying there would be immediate strikes. And one of the things that the Iranians, by the way, Aaron, have also been reacting to is what President Trump has been saying about them tapping along. The Iranians are saying, look, as far as the negotiating process is concerned, one of the things the U.S. needs to take into account is that because the U.S. and Israel targeted so much of Iran's leadership before, the security protocols that are in place right now just make it very difficult for the leadership to communicate here, and that just makes the process that much longer, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fred Pleiken, thank you very much, live in Tehran for us. Thank you. Out front now, Congressman Jim Himes. He's the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, and I appreciate your time tonight, Congressman. So what can you tell us about these new strikes as you understand what's happening?
Yeah. Well, it's part of a larger, a very dangerous game, right? So the Iranians are viewing this conflict as one big conflict. So when Israel, bombs in Lebanon, as they are, they regard that as a violation of the ceasefire. And I don't know all of the circumstances, but when a U.S. Apache helicopter goes down and we retaliate, you're into a world where they, of course, are also going to retaliate. And the reason that's a scary thing is because they have the ability. They have thousands of missiles, thousands of drones, and they don't necessarily have the ability to do a lot of damage to the United States military in the area, although we worry about that, but they have the ability to basically destroy the energy infrastructure in the UAE and in Qatar.
CNN is inside Iran as President Trump warns the U.S. will soon resume attacks on the country. He cited the slow progress on negotiations for a deal to end the war and Monday's downing of a U.S. Army helicopter by an Iranian drone. Meantime, a source telling CNN that a Qatari delegation is meeting Iranian negotiators in Tehran in an effort to bridge remaining gaps. We must also note CNN operates in Iran only with the permission of the government, but maintains full editorial control of its reporting. CNN's senior international correspondent Fred Pleitgen is in Tehran.
It's not often that we're able to attend events put on by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the one that we're at today commemorates IRGC commanders who were killed when Israel attacked Iran in June of last year. Now, as you can imagine, senior IRGC brass is not necessarily very keen to speak to media from the United States, but we were able to speak to a senior IRGC commander as well as a cleric of Iran's armed forces, both of them telling me that they're not particularly impressed with President Trump's threats that Iran will pay a price for not making a deal with the U.S. so far. President Trump says that Iran will pay a heavy price for not making a deal with the United States yet. What's your response?
Trump is delusional. He must understand the power of this great nation, and he must recognize the strength of our armed forces. He should have become aware of the great movement of our armed forces in these recent operations and fully comprehend the readiness of our armed forces with the support of the Iranian people.
If until yesterday it was only the Islamic Republic that was sanctioned, today it is the U.S. that is sanctioned in the Strait of Hormuz. And that harm affects the whole world. The Islamic Republic has not been, is not, and will never be a war seeker.
Now, of course, all of this comes right on the heels of the United States and Iran trading blows, with the United States attacking sites in the Persian Gulf, including islands and also the port of Bandar Abbas, while the Iranians fired missiles at U.S. bases in Jordan, in Bahrain, and in Kuwait. Now, the Iranians have said that there will always be a tough response from their sides to any attacks from the United States. But of course, both sides are still working to try and put together a memorandum of understanding that would then pave the way for negotiations between the U.S. and Iran to reach a broader peace agreement. All of that, of course, right now in a very difficult state. A lot of people that we speak to here say they don't really have much faith that it could happen. At the same time, the Iranians are saying that they are ready for any new attacks and will strike back hard. From Pleitgen, CNN, Tehran.
Breaking news in our world lead, the U.S. military says it started conducting strikes against multiple targets in Iran for the second straight day. Let's go to CNN's Zach Cohen. Zach, what is the U.S. military saying about these strikes?
Yeah, Jake, as you mentioned, the second consecutive day that the U.S. military is conducting strikes against Iran, framing them once again as defensive in nature. And in response to Iran's, quote, unwarranted and continued aggression, U.S. Central Command releasing a statement on X just a few minutes ago saying, quote, U.S. Central Command forces began launching additional self-defense strikes today at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time against multiple targets in Iran at the Commander-in-Chief's direction. Again, this is something we've heard the president himself talking about earlier today, saying that U.S. Central Command would be conducting additional military strikes against Iran. We heard Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also saying earlier that U.S. Central Command would be, quote, very busy tonight. And it does seem like that activity has started. Last night, we did see that initial wave of attacks which we've learned in the time since really focused on military sites around the Strait of Hormuz. Now, these were things like air defense systems and radar. It remains to be seen what the targets specifically were this evening and whether they represent any sort of an escalation in this ongoing ceasefire of sorts. Have been waiting to see whether or not President Donald Trump would ultimately order some sort of an additional military action in an attempt to pressure the Iranians into agreeing to the terms that he has very clearly stated he thinks should be signed. But again, the Iranians have not indicated that they are willing to be pushed back to the negotiating table or pushed into agreeing to terms that they are not ready to agree to. So we'll bring you more reporting when we have it on the additional strikes this evening, but there is U.S. military activity again underway for the second straight day.
Zach Cohen, thanks so much. Let's turn to our politics.
And I guess at some level, any deal starts with opening the Strait of Hormuz, which was the status quo prior to the war itself. And to that effect, Trump is now saying that the U.S. military has been involved in what he calls a quote-unquote secret mission supporting oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. He says that has resulted in more than 100 million barrels passing through. Obviously, if you look on, shipping and watching ships go, you don't see that. And then he also said this.
I can say it now. Something you didn't know. Do you know we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil? Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now.
I guess he's implying millions of their barrels that they are selling at obviously hugely inflated prices to finance the Iranian regime. What do you know about what he's saying there, about that Iran didn't until right now know we're taking millions of their barrels of oil and this 100 million barrels that Trump says he's actually helped get through the strait?
Yeah, well, look, a lot of that is just flat out untrue, right? And remember the record here, right? This war was going to be over in a couple of days. For the last 3 months, the Iranians have been 2 or 3 days or maybe a week or 2 weeks away from striking a deal. So let's just agree that the president has precisely zero credibility on anything that he says about the Iran war. But look, you don't need to be an intelligence expert to understand that in the Strait of Hormuz, you're not moving anything in secret.
President Trump says the U.S. will be launching more strikes inside of Iran today as Tehran is now condemning the latest attacks. In a new post on social media, Iran's president calls President Trump's threat to target power and water sites in the region, quote, not a display of strength, but rather a sign of helplessness. Notably, the president of Iran did not say anything about the peace deal that President Trump says has been fully negotiated. CNN's Kristen Holmes is live for us at the White House. Kristen, what's the latest there?
Perhaps the reason why he is saying this isn't coming from a place of strength is because we've heard these kind of threats before from President Trump, and that's really what's unclear at this moment. Is this just President Trump ramping up his rhetoric because he is angry that there is no deal, that he's frustrated, he's trying to get Iran to come to the negotiating table, or is he in fact considering ramping up military action in Iran, something that he has been not even just hesitant but unwilling to do for the past 2 months? And when he was sitting in the Oval Office today, he was asked a series of questions about Iran and indicated that it was time for a more aggressive stance. Take a listen to just part of what he said.
But we hit him hard yesterday, and we're going to hit him again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set. And we'll see what happens with the deal. We were really close to a deal, but they keep tapping us along. They keep playing us for suckers.
You can hear that he's frustrated there. I mean, just a reminder, it was 2 days ago that he said that a deal could be on the precipice within 2 or 3 days. It certainly sounds as though they are no longer on that square, talking about being tapped along by Iran. And President Trump also said at one point that they were considering hitting civilian targets. Now, this isn't the first time that he has said this. As I noted before, in the last several months, he has gone all the way up to the line, but never crossed it. In fact, as you will remember, that April 7th, when he was talking about a whole civilization will die tonight, and then launched into the ceasefire. So right now, what is unclear, what we're watching closely for, is that President Trump has ramped up his rhetoric. He has said there are going to be more strikes, although we have not seen those since he has said that. The question is, does he just try, or is he just trying to get Iran back to the table by threatening them, or have we entered into yet again another phase of this war?
And as we come on the air tonight, the United States has unleashed a major attack that's lasting several hours on Iran. The Pentagon says American forces are striking multiple targets in response to, quote, Iran's unwarranted and continued aggression. Iranian media has been reporting explosions at several locations along the Persian Gulf, while sharing images of what they say is a reservoir of drinking water that they argue was destroyed by a U.S. missile. When you look at this picture, experts tell CNN that the munitions fragments at that scene that you see here do appear to be from a U.S.-made bomb. Now, President Trump is arguing that this new round of strikes is in retaliation for Iran downing a U.S. helicopter that had 2 service members on board in recent days. Both of them were rescued, and initially the president told the Wall Street Journal that, quote, it wasn't a big deal. Now he's saying this.
We're going to be attacking them and attacking them very hard.
You're resuming bombing?
Yeah, well, we are. Based on the helicopter, I guess we have the right to do that.
Central Command will be busy tonight because President Trump said we will be hitting Iran hard, and we will be. Because Iran has a chance to make a good deal, a great deal, to codify what they said they've been willing to do, and they haven't been willing to do it.
Now, today the president also argued about Iran, quote, they've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price. It's a sentiment that he echoed tonight during a phone call with a Fox News reporter from the White House Situation Room. So the president is saying that's why the bombing is happening, and yet U.S. Central Command is describing tonight's attacks as self-defense strikes. If you listen to the defense secretary, though, the strikes sure sound like offensive strategy.
You can see when someone's trying to tap on a deal. Instead, they're going to have tap bombs dropping on key facilities in Iran from the United States of America. If we need to negotiate with bombs, we'll negotiate with bombs, and we're very good at it.
Now, as for what this means for the ceasefire that the administration has been arguing is still holding, despite the fire certainly not ceasing, the president said this tonight.
John, so Trump says he spoke directly to Iranian officials. What do you say to this report that you're hearing?
Well, the problem here is we've seen a pattern. The president will say whatever he wants to say to make it look like he's moving forward or that he's taking things seriously. I don't take the stuff that he says seriously anymore. I would like to. He's the president of the United States. But when you put someone like Bill Pulte in charge of the intelligence community, it shows that you're not working with your institutions. You're not going to the State Department, not going to experts, not going to the intelligence community. You're essentially are winging it and talking to non-professionals. So he's talking to the Iranians. Who's helping him? Who's behind him? These are complicated and complex issues.
Good evening from the newsroom. We begin tonight with American airstrikes on Iran, which the president just moments ago told a Fox correspondent will stop shortly. He said again, according to Fox, that Iran asked him to stop bombing, but he reportedly added, we'll bomb the S out of them tomorrow night, unquote, if Tehran does not sign a U.S. peace proposal. Iranian state media, citing a senior official, denies that Tehran contacted the president. As for the strikes themselves, they came as no surprise. The president this morning said to expect them. And this afternoon at CENTCOM headquarters, Defense Secretary Hegseth was explicit.
CENTCOM, Central Command, will be busy tonight because President Trump said we will be hitting Iran hard, and we will be. Because Iran has a chance to make a good deal, a great deal, to codify what they said they've been willing to do, and they haven't been willing to do it. So, as President Trump said, they've been tapping. You can see when someone's trying to tap on a deal. Instead, they're going to have tap bombs dropping on key facilities in Iran from the United States of America.
Just moments after he said that, the first reports started coming in from Iranian media of